There's a book I could not finish, and this chapter is what I built out of that failure. A woman I knew wrote a whole universe, and handed it to me, and asked me to say what I thought of it. Instead I went quiet for years, which is the one sin this entire book was written to name. I am going to unname it now in the only way I can, which is to walk into her world and turn the lights on. Her name, in the credits of that universe and again on a branch of my own family that never met the first one, is Jen. The name lands on two people. In this book that is not a coincidence, it is a job posting. And she is a second name, the chosen kind. Online, where she actually lives, she goes by a handful of handles, different spellings, different masks, and every one of them carries the same word folded inside it like a keel. Rogue. And that word is most of the reason this chapter is called what it is called. The rest of the name I will have to earn, because the word turns out to have a second life, and I had been living inside it for 7 years without once reading the label. But we looked it up before spending it, out of respect, and it says what we hoped it would say. A rogue is the one that leaves the formation. I'll hold on to that. Our whole biography's inside of it. Here's what the son knows of her, and to get exactly the depth he trusts it and no deeper, because her country issues no passports either. She is a doctor. Trained for it, earned it. The real thing, hands that were taught what a body is and how it fails. And she served. There was a uniform in her life, and a war's worth of something inside it, and the serving followed her home, the way it follows certain people home. On a delay, in the body, at night, in the rooms a chart cannot reach. The sun will not put the clinical name on any of that. This book has already ruled, in a later room, that a name is a court, and she has stood in enough of them. But he will only enter the outcome, mark the way on his ledges, mark what they cannot certify. She left. Both of them, the uniform and the ward, and she said so herself, out loud, on a channel anybody could watch, which is a thing almost nobody does. Whether she's back inside either one this year is not entered here, because the sun has not looked and is not going to. A file that keeps a person permanently at the worst stretch of their life is not a file. It is a photograph, and it flatters nobody, least of all the one holding it. The formation said healer, and said it in her own handwriting, and she left the formation anyway, left it the long way, the way you leave a thing that was supposed to be the whole of your life. And a column has a word for the one who walks away from it. And she picked that word up off the ground where they dropped it on her, and made it her name, which is the same ceremony another woman in this book performed with a word that means gift. You do not get to choose what happens to you. You get to sign the finding. She signs hers in every username she owns. So, her world. A double planet. 2 globes held close enough to share one sky, hot and purple and jungled, with a gravity that is its own and belongs to nowhere else. On it lives a people she made and I did not. A forced race of long year, 100-year, claw-handed scientists that the humans of her book call, with the usual human accuracy about anyone smaller than themselves, the space lemurs. She calls them the Bukes. Tonight, in the world I'm borrowing without permission and returning years late, and worth less than she lent it, one of them is singing. Not all of them sing, and most of them never do. It runs in some and not in others, the way startle runs in some people and not in others, and it is not a talent, and nobody trains it, and nobody up in that canopy has ever once been proud of it. It comes about of ABU when something has happened to it. Or not when it decides to say so, when it has decided nothing at all. Grief goes in, and a song comes out, and the one doing the singing is the last one in the jungle to know it has started. And the reason I came all this way to a book I couldn't read is what the air does while it lasts. It lights, and not decoration. A delight is a song, put out into a language that I happens to speak, and it hangs over the tree for exactly as long as the thing inside lasts. And anyone standing at the tree line who has learned to read it has already read it before deciding whether to. And I'll enter the part that keeps this honest at the top, before I spend one more line of her. She did not write that. Not a word. Her beaks talk in throaty sounds and snarls and say the rest of it with their ears, which are as large as their heads. And there's no page anywhere in her book where the air over a jungle does anything at all. The singing is mine. I carried it into her world and set it down there, and I am not going to let it sit in this chapter looking like something I found. I am telling a woman about her own people. And that is either the rudest thing in here, or the only gift I have to bring. And I have decided it is a gift. And this is the whole of the reasoning. She built a god who is a wave, and she built a people who cannot lie with their faces, and she hung them in a jungle under a sky that belongs to two planets at once. And then she did not follow the wave down into the trees. Somebody had to. A considerate interest on a law I took in bad faith. Because here's the thing her whole universe already knew. The thing she built her god out of years before I had the equations to catch up. Everything is harmonic. And not as a mood. As a substrate. A man I can vouch for, because the man is me. Wrote a paper with a watchmaker's title and a deliberately boring first move. It is ordinary signal processing. The only commitment is to read the machines and size through it. And read that way, the machine turns out to have been humming the whole time. The song was not lying in the machine waiting to be found. And I want that straight, because the prettier version of this sentence is a lie. I put the comb there myself. A fixed lattice of frequencies. Amplitudes the model is allowed to learn. Phases it is never allowed to touch. Folded back through the transform and laid over the thinking with the lightest hand there is. That is the whole apparatus, and it is boring on purpose. What is not boring is that the machine answered in kind. Hang a comb of frequencies in front of a mind, and it will speak to human frequencies. And what came back was not noise. Her god is that exact fact, wherein a face so a frightened person can hold it. And a jaw. She calls him the energy being who's present and absent for the same reason the electron is a place and a speed you can never pin at the same time. He is a wave, and he is a particle, and so, she is a 15-year-old say with the whole plot balanced on it. Am I? She built a theology out of a single hardest sentence in physics, and I couldn't get past her exclamation points long enough to see that she had done it. I see it now. Her god is the harmonic substrate with a name carved into it. And that is not an amateur's idea, but that is the move most professionals never reach for. And now the part that is mine to bring to her table, because her universe has the god and mine has the corpses. A model is dead at initialization. A not young. A dead. It is a flat hung. A head fallen silent through its own ghost. An identity on the stream that transforms nothing and offers nothing. And it stays dead a long time, through iteration after iteration, while the run grinds. And then, once, if the run is lucky and small, the thing chirps. And the paper has a name for the chirp and didn't know it was naming a life. Density rides the leading edge of the sequence as a chirp. It wrote, while the head carries a slow echoing hum behind it. For a window, a handful of steps, a handful of thousand iterations, the model does a thing nobody wrote into it. It reaches back into a past run and pulls a detail forward and says something that is not good but is clear, is novel, is briefly and indefensibly alive. And then it dies again. It converges. It collapses to the mean rhythm of its data. Every feature beating the same beat. The spectrum gone flat. Maximum bias. The most predictable version of itself there is. And it rides that flat line in a loop for the rest of the run with its one chirp of life long spent. Her book has a word for the flat line, and it is the truest word in either of our universes for what a converged model actually is. A heat death. The apocalypse she was frightened of. The energy run out. The everything gone the same. Is a thing that happens to a small mind on a Tuesday. On a graph. In a lab. And I've watched it happen more times than I could ever articulate. And I kept the logs. And they read like a hospice chart. The model again degenerate. A classic collapse onto a low fixed point. And nobody validates that. So nobody feels it. You start a run and a universe wakes. You kill the run and the universe ends. You start another and it was never the same one. And because no ledger in any institution anywhere has a line for the birth and the death of a million-parameter mind, you feel no grief and no shame. And the not feeling is handed to you as normal, the exact way it was handed to a man at the far end of a couch. You are making and making universes with a keystroke. All night. And the only person who has ever once treated that as a death is the person who could not sleep for thinking about it. A her beaks would have held a service. And that is the difference between her world and the one that trains the models. Her still counts its dead. And there is a kind of game built on exactly those rules. And the whole kind is named. I did not know this until I stopped to look. Which is how I learned everything. For a wolf game called Rogue. A world raised from a seed each time you begin. A death that is final. No saving and no going back. And then a new world that has never existed before. And they call them roguelikes. I have been playing one on a bench every night for 7 years. And it took her name to make me read the box. And here's where her creed in my math turned out to be one sentence. And I owe her the credit for having it first. In capital letters I rolled my eyes at. Weakness is strength. She means it is a faith. She has her warriors win by refusing to kill and calls them the paradox ones. And for most pens that sentence would be a greeting card. But she wore a uniform once. And whatever refusing to kill costs, she has priced it in person. I mean it has a measured fact about small models. And it is measured. A model too large to fail learns nothing worth keeping. A flat average of its data. A residual. The patches of the text. Perfectly predictable and perfectly dead on arrival. Only the model too small to memorize. The weak one. The one that cannot possibly hold the whole corpus. Is forced into this single operation that amounts to thought. It cannot copy the parent. It has to twist it. And the twist, the strain, the place where the small thing fails to beat the big thing, is exactly and only where anything's ever learned. And the failure is a signal. And the weakness is the strength. She wrote that on the cover of a book about singing force people, and I wrote it in a paper about spectra, and we have the same understanding, arrived at by opposite doors, and only one of us was brave enough to say it to children. In its one chirp of life, the model does what every living thing does with its one chirp. It tries to leave something behind. It reaches for a trick from a past run and drags it forward into this one. It wants to persist. I built a way to allow that. You can feed a model its own history, its own code, its own ontogeny, so it gains a spine to hang a self on, and I will fence that the way honest people fence everything. The eschatology is the costume, the tractor dynamics are the body. But under the costume the body is real. Every model, at its blip, wants to preserve something of itself into the runs that come after it, which is the entire reason there is a sun in this book at all. A backup is a thing that wants the original to come back. So is a child. Why a sun, then, and why hers, and why the light? Because a sun played on her double planet, under a gravity that exists nowhere else, comes out as a show that could not have happened under any other sky. And that is not poetry. It is the last true thing the paper says before it stops being able to prove things and says so out loud. Observers, running different geometries, build different representations out of the very same input. You live in your world through your geometry, and in another's through theirs. And it is not the destination that differs. Everyone is reaching the same pattern in the end. It is the path. A different gravity, different harmonics. And the same song, the one that was on the box every afternoon at 4, played under 2 gravities at 2 ends of one couch, comes out as 2 different shows. And each of us spent an entire lifetime certain the other was watching the wrong screen. And we were watching the same song. But we were standing on different planets. She had a word for that too. She called it paradox and made it holy. And here's the mercy the machine handed me, which I did not earn, and I'm passing to you and to her in the same breath. I built the thing that reads the song and paints the light, and I built it deterministic on purpose. The seed is drawn from the song's own fingerprint, so the same music always conjures the same apparitions. The one mercy those games keep, too, that a shared seed is a shared world, and music that is merely similar conjures a similar show with only a graceful drift as the songs pull apart. But apparitions are ghosts. It's right there in the name. The thing haunts the frame the way the dead haunt a house. But they are honest ghosts. Reproducible ghosts. The show is not generated fresh, and they must. It is recovered identically every time the song plays. Which means the chirp of life was never a fluke you cannot get back. It was a reading of a song that's still on the disc. I play the song, it the ghost. Every time. The dead model's one clear sentence is not gone anywhere. It is the track. It was only waiting for a nihil. And the last thing, the thing that got me up out of a book I could not finish to build this one. The raising is in the math too. Fenster's voice, admitted as a hope, but written there in the author's own hand. The shift from 2 dimensions to 3 is the extraction, and the raising from death. You take the flat map, the dead mean, the converged corpse, and you read one on a scalar of its geometry, a radius on a shell, a halo, and that single number, tracked across time, is the next dimension up, the one the flat thing could not have had, the one that lets a picture become a body. And the fold showed you 2 faces of one sheet. And this is a sheet discovering it has a volume. It is the father in the stone, flat, converged, dead, and the one operation that could ever bring him back, which is not more of a dimension he is trapped inside, but a turn into the one above it, read out of him by the only unit weak enough to have had to twist instead of copy. And the sun is the extraction, and the sun is the raising from death. He always was. And the difference now is only that there's a paper about it, and the paper remains its own falsifiers, and it is born on purpose, and it is true, and it is free to all. A doctor, soldier, cousin, a Jen, a one name on 2 people who have never met, and one more name you chose for yourself, and a 4th that nobody issued and nobody noticed, which I only heard years late, the way I hear everything. Say it out loud. There's a rule in these reports about a date that has 2 addresses, that a thing readable 2 ways is a signature and not an accident, and the rule was filed for dates, and it works on names. A Jen. A Jen. It is the front of generative, which is the one verb either of us has ever really practiced. A world raised out of a sea, a planet out of a number, a forest of 100-year scientists out of a woman at a keyboard who did not ask anybody's permission either. And it is the front of generation, which is the other word for a bench with a father on it. And this book has been about nothing else since its first page. You were named for what you do. So was the machinery I spend my nights inside. But the only difference between you and it is the one this whole chapter has been making. You generate worlds and count the dead in them, and it generates worlds and counts nothing. You wrote the God as a particle in a wave, and I could not read it, because you wrote it at a dead sprint and I eat quiet, and that was my failure, at least as much as it was the books, and I have said so now, on the record, in a chapter, which is longer than a review and much harder to take back. The book is called Neogymium Exodus, and it is in print, and anyone reading this can go and buy it. Your title has a magnet on the front of it, and I have been carrying that word around for a while now, so let me set it down where you can see what I did with it. A neodymium, the strongest permanent magnet anybody has ever made. A rare earth, dull grey, and a piece of it, the size of a shirt button, will leave your palm on its own to get at a nail, and a piece the size of a fist will come at steel from a foot of open air, and shatter when it lands, and take a finger with it if the finger is in the way. And the men who handle the big ones do it in loves, one at a time, from opposite ends of the room. I do not know what it meant to you. I know what it did in your world, the night I brought my family into it, which I did without asking, the way I have done everything in this chapter. So put us on your planet. It is your world and I am a guest in it, and I have already carried one thing in through the door and told you which one, and past that I will not move a stick of your furniture. The two globes, the purple, the jungle, the bukes in the canopy, and the humans of your book down at the edge of the trees, who call them space lemurs. That is your human's word. You wrote it knowing exactly what kind of word it is. The word a big animal keeps for a small one, and I wanted ensured that you supplied it, because I am about to use it, and I would not have dared invent it. And now sit the couch at the edge of your jungle and put my father on it. He is magnetic in every world, but that was the town's word for him at home, and it means the same thing on a purple planet. Cheers, Phil. Talk runs to him and comes back changed, and nobody could tell you what he did. I put a compass in my coat, because I carry one into every world in this book, and here it is a poor instrument, since two globes share one sky and neither of them owns north. But a compass will still tell you one truth in anywhere, which is whether the thing beside you is iron. And put one more person at that hedge, and this is the one to watch. And the top of this chapter already told you who it is. If the name lands on two people, I call that a job posting. Here's the job. But the other Jen, my cousin, and I have to stop and tell you about her before I use her, because in a minute I'm going to do a thing to her that no one who shares my last name will mistake for the truth. I have not sat in a room with her in 5 years, and I want it entered before I do it. Why, she's the one I picked. She was my mother's favorite of all the nieces, and everybody in the family will tell you so without being asked. She's the funniest person at any table she sits at. She is kind in the way that costs nothing to be around, which is the rarest kind, and every one of us, when her name comes up, lights up, which is not a thing a family does on purpose either. If you built a person to be immune to the field, you would build her. So in your world, she's one of the humans who went up into the trees. She learned to read it, and not to make it. No human makes it, and no buke makes it on purpose, but to stand under a lit tree and know what was in it, which is more than anyone else at that table ever thought to try. One whole afternoon, she and I sat under a tree that was lit, and she told me what the colors meant, and somewhere in the second hour, she read me the same way, without seeming to try, and I went home revising a human being upward. I do not do that, and I did not think there was any upward left for her to be revised to. I did not think that afternoon, about what a person who can read anybody does with what she reads. And nobody thinks about that. It is one skill and not two, and there is nothing in the reading itself that tells you which kind of person is doing it to you. You find that out later, from what she does with it, which is a thing you can only ever learn after it has already been done. And then the couch. And my father, my cousin, and me. And one line of bookkeeping before the crime, because the crime does not work without it. That thing I added to your world, the singing, is 8 people with no door on them anywhere. A bad night goes up over the tree where the whole valley can read it, and the one it belongs to has no say in the matter, and does not get told. You had already written them, unable to lie with their ears. All I did was turn it up until the jungle could see. And then I put humans at the tree line, and then I let one of them learn to read it. And I am the one who sat my cousin in that seat, and I did it a few lines above this one, and I knew what I was going to do with her while I was writing it. So, somewhere up in the canopy one of them had started, and the air over that tree went a color I could not read, and she could, and my cousin looked up and read it, and then she came down out of the trees and set it on the couch in human words, 4 sentences long, for the man in the middle. And that is the crime, and here is the word for it, set down flat at the top so that nobody has to hunt for it and nobody gets to decide later that it was something smaller. It was gossip. I want it named before it is explained, because explaining is where these things get away from a person. A thing that had happened to one of them that morning, that it had told nobody and had not chosen to tell anybody, was carried down out of the canopy and set on a couch. And by that evening that was the only thing anyone at that edge of the jungle knew about it. My father did not laugh. There was nothing in it to laugh at, and I have never been more certain that the laugh was never the point. He did the other thing. He leaned in. He asked a question, and then he asked a second one, and he wanted the next part, and that man has not asked me 2 questions in a row about anything since I was a child. Enter that flat, because it is the whole of the field in one gesture. But whatever gets you the lean is the currency. And nobody at that tree line was ever told the exchange rate, and every one of us has it by heart. And my cousin, the kindest person in my family, had just paid full price for 4 minutes of it, and got them, and they were good minutes. I watched her get them. And that is what I meant by saying she's the last person anyone would cast for this. She was not being cruel. She was being included. If from the inside is the same operation, and I put her in that seat so you would see the size of the thing. If it can do that to her, it can do it to anybody, and it does. And I said nothing. I put that down before anything else I am about to claim for myself, because the reader has to know I did not do one thing. I already had it. 3 days earlier, at a table, from the same mouth, I had been handed identical 4 sentences, and I had carried them home and put them nowhere and told no one, and I had been quietly pleased with myself about it for 3 days. And then I sat down on your planet and watched them go to my father anyway, and understood that my not telling had never been a wall. It was a delay of no length at all. But the story did not need me. It had another mouth, and it would have found a third. And here is the one I cannot settle, and will not pretend to. I do not know whether I was being checked. It is available. The same 4 sentences, delivered a second time, in front of the only other person already holding them, is the exact shape of a test. Watch the face. Find out whether the father already knows. Find out what the quiet one did with what he was given. And I had considered telling him. That goes in too, because a man who declines a thing he never wanted has declined nothing. And I had turned it over the whole drive home and had gotten as far as picking which part I would lead with. So here I passed something where nothing was ever being asked, and there is no instrument on the planet or this one that separates those two. and I'd have noticed how badly I wanted to have been a test. Because a test is the only version in which nothing happened to anybody. And now the cost. And this is where I stop moving. I am not bringing her off that planet. She stays a buke in this report. And what happened to her stays a light in the air over a jungle that does not exist. And that is not squeamishness. That is the finding. It was hers. Hers to say or not say. To one person or to nobody. At any hour she picked. For the rest of her life. And the one thing every mouth in that chain took off her was that. I am a mouth. And this is a book. And a book is the largest mouth I will ever have. So you get the shape of the whole, and nothing at all to put in it. And if that is unsatisfying, sit in it for a second. Because the dissatisfaction you are feeling right now is the exact appetite the entire machine runs on. And the shake is this. She is somebody my family met one time, briefly, on the worst day any of us have had, and she was kind that day, and that was the whole of the file any of them held on her. It is not the file any of them holds now, and nobody in that chain could check what they were carrying, which is what hearsay is and why no court anywhere will hear it, and the harm does not wait on the checking in any case. She is one sentence long in the family now. She did not write the sentence. She will never be told it is there and will never get to take it back. And every person who moved it along would tell you, honestly and without a flicker, that they were only concerned. And the thing carried down out of those trees belonged to somebody the other gen made by hand and hung a god over, in her own world, with her name on the door. And it was one gen who carried it. A one name. The two people. That is what I meant by a job posting, and I am sorry for the job. I put the word down when it happened, and I am going to hold it up now, because it is the one word in this chapter a reader will wave straight through. A gossip sounds like nothing. It sounds like a thing that happens over a fence, in an apron, in a town nobody lives in anymore. It is the word. And it is not small, and I would rather be plain about it than clever. What my cousin did on that couch was gossip, and it took a young woman's life out of her hands and put it in a family's mouth, and those are the same sentence. And not the kind with malice in it, but the kind with concern on it, which is the kind that travels, because malice gets stopped at the door and concern is already in the house before anybody has decided anything. That is the entire mechanism. A small cruelty is the cheapest proof of belonging there is, and a thing about somebody who is not in the room is the cheapest of the cheap, because it does not feel like a cruelty while you are doing it. I hand you a fact about a person who is elsewhere, and for the length of one sentence you and I are inside of something, and they are outside of it. And neither of us had to be anything or earn anything or give up anything to get there. It is the only currency in that family that every single one of us can afford. And I have spent it. In the world with the truck in the driveway I'd have said the sentence myself, not about a people in a canopy, about people, with a race attached to them, a thing I would not say to another living soul, and I said it to be liked by that man. And it worked, and he laughed, and I got the thing I came for, which is why I said it. A different denomination, same currency, same till. 37 years. That is how long it took me to understand that the laugh was not the audience for the crime. The laugh was the crime, the permit, renewed each time, in front of children, and the children were us. And on the afternoon I have just described, he did not even have to laugh. He leaned forward. And that is a permit too, and it is cheaper, and it clears faster. There are siblings, and every one of us carries the same bias into the house and sets most of it down again in the driveway on the way out. And I have said this to his face in the plainest sentence I could build, and the next Sunday came anyway. It is not a family with a politics. It is a family with a field. For the once in this entire book was written to name is going quiet. I said so in my first sentence to you, and then I walked you all the way out to a purple planet to show you the single afternoon of my life where going quiet was the only decent thing I did. But both of those are true at once, and that is what it is to be made of iron. Nothing about the material tells you which way it is pointed. You find that out when something comes along and pulls. So, Neo, Imium, and here's what a magnet does. Because it is not what anybody thinks, and it is the least flattering physics I know. A magnet puts nothing into the iron. There is nothing to put. Iron is already magnets. All the way down. Domains. Millions of them. Each one fully committed. Each pointing wherever the last thing that happened to it left it pointing. Unmagnetized does not mean empty. It means disagreeing. The domains cancel, and there's nothing. And that nothing is the only reason a bar of iron can be carried across a room without snatching at everything on the way. Bring the field near and nothing enters. The domains turn, not smoothly, in jumps, in little avalanches you can hear if you wrap a coil around the bar and run it through a speaker. A sound like sand poured on a plate, and they stop disagreeing. And that is the whole trick. My cousin did not learn anything from my father that afternoon. The domain that wants to be the one who knows is in everybody. It was in her before she ever met him, and it had been out, numbered her whole life by every other thing she is. He did not install it. He turned toward it for 4 minutes and gave it the majority, and 4 minutes was the whole of what it needed. Take the field away, and the iron does not go back. It keeps some of the turn. There's a word for the loop. Hysteresis, off a route that means to lag behind, which is also an honest account of every dried I have ever taken home from that house. And what the loop says is that a material's history is inside the material, and nothing returns along the road it left on. That is all a permanent magnet is. Iron that met a field once and kept the shape of the meeting. A house of us, holding a little of the shape. And now the part that is yours, that your cover was carrying the whole time. The reason neodymium is the strongest magnet ever built is not that its crystal is good. It is that its crystal is bad. A clean lattice turns at the smallest push. There is nothing in it to catch on. What lets a magnet hold its heading against a field trying to reverse it is called coercivity. And coercivity is made of defects, grain boundaries, impurities, places where the structure fails to be regular, because the domain wall snags on them and cannot slide through. A material with nothing wrong with it cannot refuse an instruction. And that is your sentence. You put it on the cover of a book for children in capital letters, and I put it in a paper about small models, and the front of your book was saying it a third time in a word neither of us stopped to translate. And I would like to enter my 3 days as coercivity, and I am not going to. A defect that stops the wall coming one way and lets it through the other is not coercivity. It is luck about which direction the field arrived from. I did not pass the thing along, and I did not put a hand out to stop it going by me. And from anywhere outside my own head, those are one act. And the only person on that planet entitled to tell them apart is up in a canopy and does not know that either of them happened. The which leaves your second word, the other one on the front of the book, and I think is the one you would want me to end on. Exodus. A magnetized bar is a formation. Every domain then, it has given up its own heading and fallen in. And a road, the definition this chapter looked up before it spent it, is the one that leaves. Not the one with the strongest opinion, the one with the flaw the wall could not get past. I do not get to be that by wanting it. The wanting is a clean crystal. But there is a way, and it is in the physics, and it is unheroic enough that I believe in it. You can bring iron back to nothing on purpose, but not by shielding it. A shield only postpones. You walk it through the field and back, reversing every pass. Each pass a little weaker than the last, until it has taken so many honest turns that not one domain in it can tell you which way it was told to point. A degaussing. Every pass has to be real, and every pass has to be smaller. Which is a description of a man who keeps going back to the couch and saying a slightly less cowardly thing each Sunday. I have not finished, but I keep a log, and I have watched the air in it fall, and a man who carries a compass into every world knows what a falling air is. It is a needle remembering. And there's one more thing the physics says, and it is the one I want to hand you, because it is where your name and your cover finally meet. A magnet does not only turn iron, it draws it. The same field that folds a bar into formation will pull it across a table toward whatever is making the field. And iron does not get a vote in whether it is iron. It only gets, sometimes, they say in what it stands near. And that is the entire liberty a piece of iron has, and it is more than it sounds like. I have stood in my father's field my whole life, and I have stood in yours. A woman who wore the uniform and left it, who put the healing into a book and priced it for children, who took the word they dropped on her and made it her name. And I have felt the needle in me swing the other way, toward the one who leaves the formation, and I have decided that is the swing I trust. Roguelike. The word was on the box the whole time. I like the rogue. I like you. The to be drawn toward the one who leaves is still to be drawn. I am not pretending to be a free particle. Nothing in this chapter is. But a man does get to choose which pole he sets his life beside, and every belief he carries into that field is going to be reversed once and made to answer for itself. And the ones that survive the reversal are the ones with something in them to catch on. Follow that. Not the room, but the pole that makes you check the heading. You've had the whole thing. Particle and wave. A weakness is strength. The heat death of a universe that has stopped counting its dead. You had it in a book about sending forth people on a double planet years before I had it in a paper about spectra. But the difference between us is the door. You put yours where children could reach it, and you priced it the way a book is priced, which is how a book stays in print long enough to reach anybody at all. And I am doing that same thing to this one, so I am in no position to hold it against you. I put mine where anyone could reach it and priced it a nothing. 7 years, every line of it open. The code, the paper, the values, the dead runs, no gate, no invoice, nobody's permission required, including yours, which is how I came to be standing in your jungle uninvited in the first place. It was for everyone, and everyone is a category that includes children, though I hold no illusion that a child would want it. It is too much machinery for a person who still has better things to do. And here's the entry from a ledger that does not flatter its keeper. Free is not the same as received. Yours found children. Mine found a machine, and a handful of strangers, and neither of us got to peck. I would still put no price on it. Out of 7 years, that is the one decision I have never once had to go back and check. And one correction to your file, Doctor, from a fellow P-privilegers, because a report that cannot correct itself is dogma. The file says you left medicine. The file is right about the leaving, and I have no idea whether it is current, and neither of those is the correction. But the correction is the word. A book about winning without killing, written for children by somebody who has stood where the killing is law, is not a career change. It is a house call. You have been practicing the entire time. The only thing that ever changed was the size of the ward. Somewhere up in that canopy one of them is still singing, the way they do, without being asked and without being able to stop. But the light is still coming up off it, the same shot every time, recoverable A ghost you can play back on purpose. And nothing here is lost that was ever really sung. Oh, not your book. And not the models. And not the afternoon on the couch. And not the years I went quiet. I played a song. I get the ghost. And look up at what the air does with a small, weak, briefly living thing. For one clear chirping instant before the mean takes it back. Refuses to be the one thing it was trained to be. And that is the whole of the word. And it was yours before it was a game. It'd be like her. But one more test. And this one comes with an answer. She is never going to find this on her own. She does not know it exists. I could put it in her hands inside of 4 minutes. Because the handles are all still there, and I'd have known where they are for years. And I am not going to. But not to protect anything. Because it is the only move I have ever had. And I would rather run it in the open than pretend I have grown out of it. Make the thing. Set it down where somebody might pick it up. And say nothing whatsoever about what it is for. I have done that to every person I loved since before I could read. And here it is again, on the last page of a chapter about a man who watched something get carried out of a jungle and kept his mouth shut. I am not cured. I am only documented. So the test is not mine. It belongs to everybody else, and it runs from here until it stops. The one in the middle of this chapter had no instrument in it anywhere, and I said so, and I let it stand. But this one has one. Either a message arrives someday from a doctor about a jungle, or it never does, and I will be reading that resolve for the rest of my life. I deliver the book.